Good morning and welcome to Audiobooks All Day. And today we are going to be going over the OG financial help book that is still very relevant and that shares all the lessons that every YouTube channel seems to do. And that is The Richest Man in Babylon. Kevin, take it away.
The Richest Man in Babylon. I love personal finance books.
Riches. Oh,
Yes, I would. I mean, that's more of a theoretical love. I have yet to hold them, but I would love bountiful riches. And I'm sure that I would be just a fabulous caretaker. We would just get on swimmingly, I'm sure. No Scrooge McDuck, pun intended. But now that I'm there, I wish I would have intended it because that's a man who appreciated his wealth. Like, hey, goes into his vault, hey, money, let's spend some time together, some quality time. But The Richest Man in Babylon, like you said, it's like the OG. It was written in 1926. And for those of you following along back home, that was a really long time ago. And the story is, it's a series of parables, or in other words, they're a series of stories that are meant to illustrate or teach a lesson. So instead of him just sitting down and saying, these are the 7 principles to make more money and to, get out of debt, he tells a series of stories, these parables, about primarily, not exclusively, but primarily about Arkad, who is the richest man in Babylon, and his, financial prowess. And I freaking love this book. And Arkad's super cool.
And since it opens with two friends, Ben Sear and Kobe, I felt like since there are two of us, I could be Ben Sear and you could be Kobe for the rest of the episode. Because pretty much what it is these two friends are just sitting there and they're lamenting about, we've earned so much money. We don't have any money. Why don't we have any money? We've earned so much. We're so sad.
Right.
We have nothing to show for it. And I get that. Except for the earning a lot of money part.
Right, but it's like, hey, Ben Sear makes chariots, right? And the other one who you said that I am, whose name I promptly forgot.
Kobe.
He was a minstrel. He was a bard. So he played music and carried a lyre. And they're talking about, Ben Sear's just chilling. He's got the long face. He's got the 1,000-yard stare. He's just thinking, I'm working so hard, and yet I feel like my back's against the wall. And he's like, what am I doing wrong? He's like, I am one of the best chariot makers in all of Babylon, and I'm working so hard on what I'm doing wrong. And then his friend Kobe comes up, and he's like, man, why you got the long face? And he's like, also, can you lend me 2 shekels or shillings? And I'm not sure if they actually used shillings back in Babylon, but that is beside the point. And he's like, and Ben Sear's like, if I had 2 shillings, I would lend them to you. But if I did have 2 shillings, it would also be my entire fortune. And he's like, but Ben Sear, you're such a talented, chariot maker. Why don't you have any money? And they're going on and they're talking about their friend. Well, first they're talking about like, man, why are we working so hard and getting nothing in return? And then they start talking about their friend back from school.
High school.
High school.
Class of,
I don't think they ever used the term
BC.
high school. But just how they had some school where they went to the priests who apparently were in charge of education. But they were talking about how their friend Arkad is super rich, and they say he's the richest man in Babylon. And how did he get so rich? Because he came from the same circumstances as they did.
And the thing that they notice, like their key is that he's wealthy, yet he's also generous. So how can he make many financial contributions to the community while also having all this great wealth? And so they load up and they go visit this rich man. And that's where we get all of these really great lessons. And I had so much fun relearning a lot of these principles. So like the two, like there's kind of like two core sets of lessons that he teaches. The first are the 7 cures for a lean purse, which is really addressing the issues that these friends are coming to him for, and then the 5 laws of gold. Um,
I want to
and
go over the 7 cures of the lean purse.
all right, and so since someone is first, we can have you start there. But this is kind of why I said at the beginning, this is what like every YouTuber tries to teach. It really is, but it is kind of crazy how much we need to learn these lessons in different ways. Um, and I will just say right before you get started, like the first one, I just love its name. And I've said it to myself a couple of times, and it's just such a weird way to say it. But like, start thy purse to fattening. That is the first word. Like, but essentially all it means is pay yourself first. Like, save 10% of your savings. I'll let you go into it. But like, start thy purse to fattening. And I feel like that should be up on a billboard, like, or like in my office. You know, start thy purse to fattening. Anyways, go for it.
Well, and just like you said, like I've read many books by Dave Ramsey, Tony Robbins. The name of the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad escapes me, and any number of personal finance books, and so many of them, many of their core principles are just found right here. But yeah, so the 7 cures for a lean purse. Number 1, start thy purse to fattening, and the principle is save 10%. Whatever you earn, pay yourself first. Give yourself 10%. Number 2, control thy expenditures. Live within your means. If you're saving 10%, be able to live off that 90. Make thy gold multiply. Invest your savings wisely so that it earns more income. And essentially that your money should grow over time. 4, guard thy treasures from loss. And when I was listening to the book, I heard loss as laws. And I thought, that seems like a little bit dicey.
Treasures from laws. Honestly, it's the same thing.
I mean, if you can do it legally, then, then that's the law. But guard your treasures from loss. But essentially, don't do overly risky investments. Protect your principal. Then make thy dwelling a profitable investment. The bottom line was owning your own home. And owning your own home, he goes in that it not only can create financial incentives, but it also is, there's a very big mental difference in owning your own home, but as opposed to renting it. You feel differently about it. You take, all obviously literal, but also figurative ownership of it.
Yeah, and we can definitely dive into the benefits of owning a home on your fulfillment as a human being, and all of that stuff is super real. Like I just finished a big project in my garage. We painted it, we organized it, looks great. Like there's that satisfaction, but then also the equity that's essentially built. And he doesn't use it like this, but he essentially, he talks about each payment, that you make reduces your indebtedness. But not only are you reducing debt, you are increasing future reward. And I kind of thought that was interesting because I think, like there's a lot of financial gurus like Dave Ramsey who like your home isn't necessarily, well, so I think that Dave Ramsey does consider your home an asset, but then there's some that don't consider it an asset.
Right.
And I think that in this, what he's saying though, is that the home itself may not necessarily be an asset, but the appreciation that it does is an asset to you. And I actually liked that way of looking at it much more than any other way I've heard somebody describe a home.
Right. Yeah, I feel like there, at least, for some of my connections on LinkedIn, it's pretty much there's a lot of constant arguments over whether it is fiscally better to own or rent. And I will say that the arguments for ownership, like you said, those are more classical examples. I think there are some for renting that feel very strongly about it. And there are actually some good points of rental, but I have rented, and I am fortunate enough to own my home, and there is a qualitative difference in my feeling about it. So it probably isn't for everybody, but for me, that really resonated because I feel like I treat my home differently when it's mine. It's not that I ever treated any place that I rented poorly, but I take more active care. And yeah, that means that I'm responsible for a lot of things. I'm responsible for mowing the lawn. I'm responsible for, my dryer broke down a couple weeks ago. And it was like, well, I could pay a couple $100 for somebody to come out and maybe fix it. I could pay more than that and just replace it. Or I could watch 20 YouTube videos and see if I can fix it. And which is what I did, and it hasn't burst into flames yet, which is great news for me. But despite the fact that that took a lot of time, it cost me $23 by doing it myself, but it took a lot of time and effort. And, it was also, I had to learn something new, but also at the same time, I felt a tremendous amount of satisfaction for taking care of my home and the things in it. And I think that satisfaction is something that is extremely difficult to quantify, but something that I feel very deeply. And the sixth law for 7 cures for a lean purse, because we just made it to 5, was ensure future income. So plan for retirement and for your future financial needs. And then the last one is increase thy ability to earn. Invest in yourself by improving your skills and knowledge to increase your earning potential. Now, I would wager that none of those 7 laws feels like a surprise to anyone, but actually implementing them and living by them, that is a much starker contrast. I know a lot of people who make good money but have no savings, have, no retirement, and don't have a lot of things that, wealth can bring you, simply because they're not making decisions to take care of their wealth and to make it start working for them. And they're not making decisions today to help them tomorrow.
100%. A couple of there was a quote that I really liked from this, and it was with Make Thy Gold Multiply. And this is one of the things that I've actually been telling myself a lot. The gold we may retain from our earnings is but the start. So, really the starting of our journey is retaining the earnings. And you can actually take these 7 laws, and I think that they are pretty linear. You do one, then you do the next one, then you do the next one. And then you can layer on like Dave Ramsey's rules, and put more like concrete rules to it. Like here's where your emergency fund comes in. Here's where your, investing in index funds comes in. Here's where all these different aspects, you can layer on actionable steps to each one of these. But I really liked these 7 rules. I think that they were a good way to say it. I must say, though, of all of them, just, start thy purse to fattening. Number 1, start thy purse to fattening, please.
Love it.
And then the 5 laws of gold. And hey, these ones are a little bit, so, there's just these weird laws about money. Like, for example, one that I've heard recently that I just think is super true is the more you pay attention to your money, the more it will grow. Like, just by looking at it. The more you look at it, the more it will grow. And then they're like, well, if I just look at it, it's like, yes, if you look at your money every single day, if you just look at it, it will grow.
Which is the opposite of grass growing, by the way.
And it was like, it's like the more you pay attention to your relationship, the better it will be, and like that's how it was essentially. And so these are a lot like that. So number 1 is gold cometh gladly and in increasing quality to any man who will put by not less than 1/10 of his earnings to create an estate for his future and that of his family. 2, gold laboreth diligently and contentedly for the wise owner who finds it for it or who finds for it profitable employment, multiplying even as the flocks of the fields. I like that one. It's like your gold is like a laborer, so give it a job, put it to work. If it's just sitting there
Totally.
idle, you know, I just really like that. 3. Gold clingeth to the protection of the cautious owner, who invests it under the advice of men wise in its handling. 4. And this one's my favorite. Gold slippeth away from the man who invests it in businesses or purposes with which he is not familiar, or which he is not approved by those skilled in its keep. 5. Gold flees the man who would force it to impossible earnings, or who followeth the alluring advice of tricksters or schemesters, who trust it to its own inexperience and romantic desires in investment. So essentially, these are the things that gold will always be, and these are ways to lose it. These are ways to gain it. I think that I love the idea of just looking at gold as a laborer. It's your employee, it's your asset. So you need to be the one putting it to work. And how most people put it to work is through low cost index funds. That's how most people put it to work. But it's so interesting. Even though this book was super short, I can't tell you how many times I opened up like my investment apps and started looking at them and just wanted to increase my own wealth and keep making my money work for me. And even though that it's not super pertinent to the book, Kevin, would love to hear a couple of the things that you do that help your money get put to work for you.
Well, like you were saying, I love the concept. They talked about having thousands of gold servants working for you. I think about my job, like how much more would I get done if I had a bunch of assistants helping me? And it's like, if your goal is to gain wealth and to fatten your purse, then hire these people, you save them, and then you put them to work. And there are anybody with a YouTube channel will tell you strategies on how to make money. Many of them are solid, and many of those solid ones are exactly the same. There are a lot of ways to make money, but it really comes down to a few things. And like I said, I've read a lot of personal finance books, and one of the kind of the things that has really, really stuck out to me is something by Tony Robbins. And he said that the two, I don't remember, I'm paraphrasing, but the two things that stop people from making money, and I think he was referring to the stock market explicitly, are fear and fees. Fear being the not putting it in. Your money cannot grow in the stock market if it's in your bank account, which sounds obvious, but the reality is how many of us procrastinate putting that money into a place where it can do some more good. Now, we need to take care of our operating expenses and stuff, but just not moving it to the right place at the right time, that fear, that's gonna stop us every time. That is, if we give in to that fear, sure, we will be protected from loss, but we will be protected against any gain. And the second thing is fees, is that if you're investing in things that are taking a lot of those profits as fees, there are certain mutual funds that consistently, return above market average, but their fees are so high that you're coming in, below on something that would have a lower return but lower fees. It really can be very, very dramatic. And if that sounds daunting, of how do you pick stuff? I mean, every single, Fidelity, Vanguard, Charles Schwab, Robinhood, any investing app that you could really get will have Morningstar reports, and those are just standard reports that are evaluations of things. So if that concerns you, like if in any investment app, you'll be able to find out what the fees are. They publish that information, and it's it's easy. You pull up a couple and you just start comparing and start figuring out what looks good to you. But for me, I think the biggest thing is, let money get in the game. Here not that long ago, I totally revamped my personal budget. me and my wife, and we slashed a lot of stuff to make sure that we were actually putting an appropriate amount into our savings. That caused a lot of sacrifices. But one thing that it talks over in the book, that these, from some of the parables of people taking this advice, is that once they start paying themselves 10%, even though it doesn't feel that way, they find a way that they're still covering their expenses. And yeah, it takes sacrifice, but it's not as dramatic as you would think. And that you find a way and you adapt. And that was absolutely true for us as well. But I think the biggest thing is get it in the game. Do a little bit of research, and there's nothing wrong with going on YouTube and listening to people. I'm really skeptical of things that, boast really big gains. And people do get it. I'm a lot more risk averse than most. So I'm, looking at total market index funds or Fortune 500 index funds, or stuff in the bond market. Like that's me. That's my risk tolerance. I occasionally do more risky things, like single stocks and other things, but I'm generally a pretty risk averse person. But I believe that the very first thing, regardless of your strategy, whether you're risk averse, whether you have a very large risk appetite, whether you have no idea what you're doing, the very first step is to start to get some money in. And it doesn't have to be, if you have, a little bit saved up and you're not really sure what to do, you don't have to do all of it all at once. Just make an effort, put a couple bucks
and start that purse to fattening, just like having money, just having some money to look at and then to hopefully deploy and then grow is that first step. I just think that there's going to be some crazy economic times coming. And I think that provides opportunity for the prepared investor. The person that's prepared has first capital to deploy. Second, it has the knowledge to be able to know what to do. And then third, a bit of the tempering experience to be able to know and to weather hard storms. And if you're able to have that, I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity. But bottom line is you can't really get to that opportunity unless you kind of follow these steps and understand your relationship to money. I certainly haven't figured out everything, but I think this book was really great. I love parables that kind of take me back. This one, going back to ancient Babylon, and I think it's just so amazing given the timing of when this book happened. It happened in the Roaring 20s, where a lot of people were having a lot of disposable income. They were investing it, and then the stock market crashed in 1929, and then this book had a huge reprinting in 1930 because people were looking for very simple ways to get their financial life back on track. I have no idea how many people actually benefited from it over that time period, kind of in that Great Depression up through World War II. But all I know is that this book is still relevant enough for us to listen to it and gain things. I actually had no idea it was written in 1926 until I started preparing for this podcast. So anyway, I think that there are these general principles about money that are helpful, and hopefully all of us could be Arkads and share these lessons to others. And overall, great book. I thought the audiobook reader was wonderful. You can find it in Audible.
On the Plus catalog.
Yep, it's on the Plus catalog, so nice and free. No excuse. And thank you all so much for tuning into this episode. Go for it, please.
No, sorry. You were wrapping it up so great, but you reminded me of my favorite part of the book. My absolute favorite part. There's this part where Arkad, essentially, he's created the Babylonian Forum, and a bunch of people gather in the evening, and they're all chilling, and they're talking about these different things, and they talk about a couple different subjects, and he opens up the floor. He says, "Does anyone have anything they want to discuss?" And a dude stands up and he says, "Today I found a purse with gold in it," and he said, "I was very lucky." And he says, "I would like to discuss how do we attract luck." And they have this big discussion. And it comes down to basically them saying is that luck is completely ambivalent. Sometimes we have good luck, sometimes we have bad luck. Sometimes we have a string of good luck, sometimes we have a string of bad luck. But that, they talk about, what are some of the times that, what is a lucky thing in our finances? It's when something happens that gives us, really good return. And then you're like, well, where are the times that we were unlucky? And they talked about how a lot of those instances where they were unlucky was when they actually were, breaking some of these laws that they've discussed, the 5 principles of money or the 7 laws for fattening thy purse, and that they were actually breaking some of the laws. But the biggest thing is they start to bring down is are you prepared for good fortune? And they hit this point, and I just thought it was awesome, is that it's not about the way to be lucky is to be prepared, and that you can only be lucky by being ready to take the opportunities that come to you. Like you were talking, is that, market instability is not for somebody who, is financially sound, is not necessarily a bad thing. Stuff goes up and stuff goes down, but there's opportunities in all markets, in bear markets and in bull markets. And that you just need to be prepared. And it's something so simple. But they have this story of this guy who is like, didn't invest in this business venture because he wasn't willing to make the sacrifices. And then it went bigger than anyone thought it could have. And just be prepared. That being prepared for these things is what's going to make you lucky. And if you're saving that 10%, if you're paying yourself first, you're going to have that flexibility to take advantage of opportunities. And yeah, you're going to miss. And Arkad talks about how he saved in the whole first year and he invested it in a bad investment. And he lost all of it. But he kept doing it. And you learn and you grow. And just to that, luck comes from preparation and being ready to act when the time comes.
Yeah, and I think that there's a reason why the book is ordered the way it is. It has these 7 laws and then these 5 principles and then a whole bunch of other stuff. And then the very last chapter is the luckiest man in Babylon. It doesn't start with luck. You don't start lucky. You end lucky because of everything that happens to you. So you do all of this stuff. You can become the richest man in Babylon, then you become the luckiest man in Babylon. And so that's I think a very good thing for us, because I think that we all hope that we start with luck first. We start with that lucky thing that will just make us, rich. It's not. It's doing everything else, then you become lucky. And that's what I like the most. So anyway, thank you all so much for hopping on, and may we wish you luck on your wealth journey in our modern day Babylon. Peace.